All right.
And we're recording.
So we're at full attendance here, the Whitman Finance Committee. The date is April 21st. Did everybody get a copy of the agenda in the email that was sent out in advance?
Thank you.
All right.
Yes.
Does anybody not have it? So we'll just take a quick run through just to make sure we make enough time to cover everything. So the meeting minutes we have from last week, everybody should have gotten those. Reserve fund stands at $30,314. Public forum is temporarily suspended because of the COVID-19 limitations. So I can make available my email address at the end of the meeting. So if somebody from the public wants to put a question in for us to think about at our next meeting, we want to try to make the process as easy as possible. Under new business, we've got the Board of Selectmen updates. Would see if we can maybe do around the table and put together some agenda items for our joint meeting in 2 weeks. We'll talk a little bit about the Whitman Hanson budget assessment, or the budget and the assessment, warrant articles and funding. We've got some new spreadsheets that have been worked on in the last week. And then we'll do subcommittee reports from the Buildings, Facilities, and Capital Expenditures Committee, and also for the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee. So review Article 2, we do have a new, everybody gets a new copy of Article 2 for this meeting as well. There have been some changes to that. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And communications, we won't get a town administrator update. So the Board of Selectmen is meeting at the same time as we are tonight. And then we'll talk a little bit about our upcoming meetings. And again, just as a reminder, we don't have a meeting next week. We'll be meeting again when we meet jointly with the Board of Selectmen on the 5th. So with that, we can move to the meeting minutes, the draft meeting minutes that were provided in advance of the meeting, April 14th. We have 3 pages. The first page dated April 14th. Is there anything on the first page that anybody would like to amend? I'd like to take a look at the last paragraph just a little bit. And the way it's written now, it says, Mr. Anderson gave an update on the Whitman Hanson Regional School District budget. The proposed budget of $55,040,238 was not passed as it did not include the reinstatement for teaching positions. So I'd just like to clarify that a little bit. There's several reasons why the budget wasn't passed, and I think most of us know one of the reasons is because there are some members of the school committee who feel that the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee is going to somehow come up with some miracle saving for Hanson's finances. But specifically what I said when I gave the report from last week was that the budget was not set by the end of the meeting. I think if the sentence could say that instead of not passed. And then further to the point about the 4 teaching positions, a second sentence could say it was not supported by at least one member of the committee, as it did not include the reinstatement of 4 teaching positions. Samantha, did you get that?
I got it.
Okay.
I believe it was 3 members did not support it.
Yep.
Because of but I don't know.
But at least one member covers it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Anything else on that page?
yeah.
Just that first sentence, just include the full name of the budget override committee.
Okay. Samantha, you got that? It's the Buildings, Facilities, and Capital Expenditures Committee. Everybody has trouble with it.
No, the first line is the budget override committee.
That's what you're referring to. Budget override committee. Okay.
Yeah, Dave sent me his edits prior to, so he'll just mention his edits and I've already incorporated them.
Okay.
Efficient.
Sounds good, yeah.
Okay, I don't have this in front of me. It's not coming up on my computer where I had it earlier.
The meeting minutes?
Yes, because
Okay,
there were things that they were excluded that I thought were important.
So while you're looking, can we go back to the Second Amendment? What was that again? Well, not the one that has to do with firearms. The Second Amendment on the first page of the meeting. Just want to clarify that.
Gotta get it here.
This isn't an editorial for gun owner rights here, but, so Samantha, who submitted the amendment by email?
Dave did.
Dave, okay. So in the future, maybe we could send out the amendments. If they're going to be submitted online, everybody should get them in advance. So what was the second amendment that was requested? Dave, you want to say what it was?
Well, just for point of clarification, I just sent her, every amendment that I propose is going to be done during public meeting. I just sent them to her as part to make it easier on her for typing and clarifying.
Right, so
are we
this
on
is the
page
time. So this is the time to make it part of the public meeting. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Are we on page 2?
Oh, it's on
which
page
one?
2. Well, we're not on page 2.
No.
What did you want the name of the committee to say? That's your amendment, right?
Right. Yeah. The full name of the Budget Override Committee.
So wasn't it BOEC, Budget Override Evaluation Committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Samantha, you got that one?
Yep.
Okay, so there's just two, right now there's just two amendments for this first page. Okay, anything else? Moving on to the second page.
First paragraph, almost the last line. Warrant until the recommendations from Finance Committee have been voted by FinCom and/or discussed during a joint meeting.
Okay. And then on the one after the space, you could write the full name of the committee too, right? This is where you'd have the Buildings, Facilities, Capital Expenditure Committee instead of the Capitals Committee, right?
On the third paragraph?
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else on page 2?
Yeah, in the second sentence, however, based on an email that Mr. Anderson forwarded to FinCom, blah, 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 for Article P7, and then new words, then what was present at the new words at the end of that would be that Article P7, and then new words, then what was presented at the time of the vote. So the full sentence would be, however, based on an email that Mr. Anderson forwarded to FinCom that contained information from Chief Greno, which contained different purchase requests for Article P7, new words, than what was presented at the time of the vote.
Okay, does everybody understand that sentence change?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the next sentence, just the word discussing before rescinding. So Mr. Cadero stated that the BFCC will be discussing rescinding the vote.
Okay.
And then the next sentence, the article has misinformation and deviates from the Madden recommendations, and then new words that were presented by the Budget Override Committee and voted by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Makes sense. Yep, very good.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I now have it up.
Okay.
Is,
You wanna go
and
back?
I went back and I went through all the minutes, and it seems that from, let me get my timing. a whole section with a discussion on open meeting was missing from the time when I'm reviewing it, from 8. Hold on one second, I'll have the exact times. From 8:05 in the minutes to almost 10 minutes missing. So I can, I mean, I think they need to be included. It includes a meeting that took place from MMA that include members of the original
Amendment Committee.
Yeah, override committee. There's a whole section that I do think needs to be included because I do have concerns that these meetings are not being made public, and they're I feel as if it's kind of fast and loose with open meeting law, and I do think they need to be included. I can give you the whole section and the times on the tape.
Do you happen to know where it would fall in the body of this particular document?
It would fall after Lamartina's talking regional assessment. They talked about, within it, they talked about 2 different ways they were trying to negotiate, but both of those ways would require Whitman to pay more after we've paid more for millions, for over $4 million in the past, what was it, 5 or 6 years. And there's no, and my statement was that I was concerned that we have received only an oops and no true explanation for that over $4 million during the period, of the last 5 years. So that I felt as if these meetings needed to be open.
Okay. So Samantha, do you recall in the meeting tape where that was
I can give
located?
you the times.
The discussion?
I think it would be at the bottom of page 1. In that whole section, Mr. Anderson gave an update on the Whitman handle, because I listened to the tape again, to regional school department budget. And
It's a lot.
discussion went on for about 20 minutes.
So the context was that...
Of 20 minutes worth of stuff kind of not there.
So
I
the
don't know if you
context
wanna
was
pass.
we were looking for the selectmen to give us an update on the discussions that had taken place after the Regional Amendment Committee's public meetings went private. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And they mentioned a meeting in which more than 4 members of that disbanded group were in and not posted. So I really think that that's vital. And then there are no finance committee members that were from Whitman involved in this, just one from Hanson. It's apparent, so just to show that Whitman Finance has not been included in this vital financial matter.
So do you have any recommendation for a text? Or?
I can play it, like I can get up there and just play the section. I can pull it up. I can know it's from 8 minutes till about 20 minutes. And
so just a summary. Do you think you could just give a summary?
Can we pass? Because I'm going to write a summary out. It was a lot, so I can try to summarize it to solidify, but it would take me a little longer than just this meeting to solidify.
Why don't we put just a little circle there on the bottom of the first page and move on to the other amendments that have been prepared in advance so that they don't get lost, maybe?
Yes.
So, Samantha, you're already that. We're gonna put a circle on page 1 at the bottom where we're gonna make a recommendation to include some text there.
Yep.
Okay. So moving to page 2. Is everybody ready to move page 2 now? Okay. So we're down through the middle of the document. So we're past where Greno discussion was made and the decision of the Board of Selectmen to move town meeting. Anything else on the rest of that page?
Oh,
Seeing none, we'll move to the third page.
I have an amendment on the 3rd page.
I do.
Okay.
too.
The second paragraph where we were doing the items on page 4, left out, we questioned line item 210,
Yep.
and that's not in the minutes.
Okay, you got that one, Samantha, 210?
Yep.
Okay, and, all right. Any other amendments for the third page?
Nope.
All right, I do understand how difficult it is to transpose a recorded meeting into written minutes, but I do recognize that it is important if there's some aspect of the meeting that one or more members feels should be incorporated into the meeting minutes, we should take the time to do it. So
Okay.
with that, I'll entertain a motion to table the meeting minutes until such time as we can get a draft of an amendment to be incorporated into the meeting minutes.
I will send off my draft minutes tonight. I'll finish them up and send them out so you can review them.
Okay, so I move to table.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? We'll have to do a roll call vote. I'll just go around the table here. John?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It's unanimous. We'll table the meeting minutes until next week. And that way we can get the amendment in there and vote the minutes. Okay, moving on to the agenda. So BOS updates. Following our last meeting, as the meeting minutes reflected, there was a request for the chair to send an email to the Board of Selectmen requesting that they do not sign the warrant until such time as the Finance Committee has reviewed and made recommendations of everything in it. So everybody get a copy of the email, right? I sent out. So
Yep.
That
Yep.
did go out. So I certainly understand what the purpose is, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity for us to have a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen so that we can put everything on the table here and have a discussion about all of the very complex budget we have this year. So anything else for the Board of Selectmen updates would probably include the fact that they did vote to not include COLAs with salaries, which is, something that this board talks about a lot, talk about salaries. Well, the implications from the COVID-19 pandemic obviously are going to have a detrimental effect on the budget for this coming fiscal cycle. So the wisdom was that no raises be part of salary lines within Article 2. So additionally, they did vote to accept the collective bargaining agreement that is ratified with the fire department. So that will be a little bit of probably a discussion that we can have when we get back into Article 2, wherein the fire department is the only department that has a ratified contract and could then have adjustments to their salary lines. With obviously, that's something we got to talk about.
I have a comment on that, Rick.
Go ahead, John.
It's my understanding that the Board of Selectmen did not formally vote to take the COLA out. It was discussed and they agreed to consider it, but I do believe they're discussing and voting it tonight. But I do know that there was not a formal vote taken, but it has been discussed and they are in favor of it, but they did not vote it officially.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Thank you for the clarification. Given the fact that we do have some time because of the delay of town meeting, I would suggest that we wait until we do make a determination on the board's final action with respect to salaries within Article 2 before we, move to start voting lines again. So again, I put in here under new business and agenda items for the joint meeting. So maybe I'll take this opportunity to go around the table here and see if anybody has specific items that they would like to include. I did post a meeting. I did draft an agenda and included items that we typically talk about. But I think it's important for this committee, as we are a 9-member committee, to talk about collectively what we want to discuss at the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. We don't have them very often. This is an important budget cycle, obviously. So anything that anybody feels is important, I think that we should incorporate it into the agenda. So I'll start at the corner with John. Any specific items that you would like to see?
Yeah, just kind of following up on some research that I've been doing. I think there's we definitely need to discuss the levy and the warrant articles, the basically where the money or where the funding sources are going to be for all the warrant articles. One of the handouts that I emailed out today that was from Frank that looks like this. I don't know if everybody can see it, but
yeah.
His comment there is, if you look in the middle, that the total for Article 2 is $36,201,803. However, within the levy, there's only $35,765,650.
John, I don't mean to interrupt, but without getting into specific items, I think we're just looking for an agenda. You know what I mean?
Well, to discuss the shortfall of the levy and how we're going to fund the warrant articles.
Okay. All right. I'll come back to you. Kathleen?
My big concern is one I share with Rosemary, and it's these meetings that are held, and I know some of them are necessary, but these meetings that are held to apparently arrive at a compromise with Hanson, and I want that to stop. I think Hanson is being led to believe that there are people in Whitman who want to pay their bills, and I don't believe that represents the vast majority of Whitman residents.
Okay. Rosemary?
I think I said it before, we have to rethink the budget, and before we go into the COLA, particularly when we're looking to still fund one, continue cost of living for one department and not police and DPW, who also have risk in this particular COVID-19. I think we should consider budgeting to the new environment of next year. I mean, I just don't see that we'll be opening the pool and we have to consider how those things are going to impact. And I don't think we really have. They're starting to do it on a state level. They're starting to do it with schools in other towns like Belmont, Mass. We can kind of get a guideline by looking at other countries that are opening, say, schools or whatever. But one of those things that they're doing as they open up schools is they're eliminating busing. They have to be, because you can't have kids more than 6 feet. So they're taking out busing. So some of these other the pools, the programs we don't want to pay for things we're not going to use. It's like heating a room that you're not going to be in. So we need to rethink these budgets. I would hope to at one point maybe revisit with just a quick with department heads. What do you foresee the COVID changes for your department? So maybe we could pull some of the money, say if we're not going to open the library for the summer, or we're going to be using the library differently and we don't need to cool it down, like people aren't going to be there. Maybe there's a shift in how we can spend money, without affecting people, especially people who are putting their lives at risk, to do this without taking away their salary. I mean, they had cuts last year.
No, I understand. No, that's a good idea. Very good. Thanks. Dave?
No, I don't have anything on in particular.
Okay. Al?
Good right now, Rick. Thank you.
Okay. Chuck?
No, I'll just echo what Kathleen said. I really getting kind of tired of these meetings where they're being led down a road where they think there's going to be compromise. I think your letter and that information was really spot on. So it'd be nice to see us move forward instead of just, spinning wheels. And just one question, Rosemary. When you were talking about COVID money, are you with the police and fire? I mean, they have their contracts. They may get their raises. Are you advocating for giving them more money? Money that's not used?
I'm advocating I'm not advocating anything specifically. I'm advocating to not go there first, but to look before we do that. Let's look at how we're using these departments. All departments
Yeah.
will be being used
Well, I
differently.
think
And then when
they're doing their jobs. That's what
oh,
they're
I
there for.
agree. I agree.
They're
Their
very well
jobs have
supported.
shifted.
They're
Their
very well
jobs have.
supported in this town.
Okay.
Just
Their jo-
looking at innovative ways because of the different
Exactly.
environments, right? That's
The
really,
environments changes, and some of these jobs have increased risks.
yeah.
Got to
Okay.
consider that.
We all
Scott,
have an
any-
increased risk.
I agree. I agree. Now, I'm talking in terms of, contact. Like, they have to walk into other people's houses.
That's part of their job.
Oh, I know.
It is. And I agree. The money that we may save in other ways, I think that'll come in handy for other things like DPW or the school teachers and stuff like that.
Oh, I agree.
I applaud anybody for putting their lives on the line, but that's what they sign up for. That's their job, and they do it to the best of their abilities.
Okay, thanks,
I-
Jeff.
Just my opinion.
Oh, no, that's fine. I guess what I was saying is, it's not across the board that this is happening. Am I not correct? The fire has a negotiated contract, but
That is correct, but it will be
DPW?
up to the recommendation of the finance committee what we put before the voters. So
Okay.
it doesn't necessarily have to be the only department that gets a raise.
Yeah, and this is something we've been trying to work on the last few years, and unfortunately, this might be a little bit of a push where, we can kind of cap some things, so that we can, because we need the money in other places.
Oh, I agree, and let's make sure. Additionally, when I listened to the Capital Committee, it seemed as if we were going to do this in terms of because we were short on money. But I think the first step that there wasn't a plan to do this prior to that, and I could be wrong, but what I'm saying is before we do that, we've skipped a step. We haven't looked at, like, there are things we aren't even going to be using at all, and we're still going to be paying for it. I think
we
that's the
understand.
step. Take that
All right.
step first.
Okay,
I just
we'll
want to
bring that up. Yep.
move on. Okay,
Okay.
Thank you both. Scott?
Yeah, I think I just want to discuss where we are with the, if there's been changes in policy with the Madden recommendations, and are we still following that? I know we would like to see it followed. I want to make sure that everybody's still on board with that. And yeah, I think we need to take a big look at the shortfall between the levy and what we've got in there that we're spending.
Right, so we'll have a chance to look at that a little bit tonight too, but, yep, okay, that's good. We'll make sure that's part of the agenda as well. Anything else, Scott? Okay, Ralph?
Well, I would like to hear the selectmen regarding this $4 million.
Oh, we lost his audio.
Did we lose
Lost
them?
your audio.
Yeah.
You'll have to say it again, Ralph. We lost whatever you said.
Okay. What I was saying is I'd like to hear from the selectmen, what do they think we ought to do about this $4 million that we've overspent with Hanson? Should we try and put together some sort of legal action and Whitman sue Hanson and get our money back? I mean, what's their guidance in this case?
Okay. All right, we'll put that on the agenda. I'm sure that's going to be something we talk about. Hopefully we'll be on this by the 5th of May. We'll be beyond this discussion about Hanson's self-imposed financial crisis, and we'll be moving on to things that affect all of the students of the district. So that's a good.
I look at it and think about it, now from the standpoint of being a Whitman homeowner, if all of a sudden I'm going to have to deal with a property tax, and yet I'm supporting another town, that's a tough pill to swallow.
That is. Yep, I agree. Yep. Good point, Ralph.
It's been a pill you've been swallowing for a long time and not
Right.
not
Yeah, just
having a
haven't
choice
known
in the
it.
matter.
I know, but now that I do have some choice, to be polite,
Nobody's
I'm not
got-
gonna be
exactly.
polite as I would say, but I'd say I want my FF money back.
Yeah. Well, you didn't swallow the pill, but it's been stuck between your teeth for 4 years. John, did you want to add anything else? I know you were thinking about another item, or? Anything else?
No, no.
Okay. So the only other thing we did touch on when we talked to them last time was the non-mandated busing. I think that the discussion still needs to take place. I mean, Don Byers did some great work with a preliminary recommendation that includes the phased approach that doesn't cost a dime for the first phase. So I think that we should keep that at least on the stove, if not on a back burner, you know, so. And then if anybody else has anything in the meantime, we can amend this agenda. You know, I mean, it's pretty loose anyways, with a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. I'm sure it'll be in this format. So, John, are you going to be able to set that up for the 5th? Will you be hosting?
Yeah, most likely, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
so it'll be broadcast live on cable as well. So it'll be similar. There'll just be more people in the Hollywood Squares. That's all.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
It's good.
All right.
Hey, that's a show that hasn't been on TV in 30 years.
You look great, Ralph.
All right, so that's it for that agenda item then. Like I said, keep it in mind. If there's something that you think of that you would like to include, don't hesitate to send an email out to get it on the agenda. So with the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District budget, as I mentioned, there is no budget. There is no assessment. We are still due an assessment 30 days before our town meeting. So hopefully they can recognize the fact that we are being held hostage by this whole issue and that they will, for the benefit of the students, get moving on the budget. So anything anybody wants to add to that discussion? I will take a little bit of time to talk about what has been discussed within the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee. Further on down in the agenda, we do have a subcommittee report. So anybody? Okay. So warrant articles and funding. So John did forward updated documents. We do have several versions, I guess, of the revenue forecasting. John, do you want to take some time and go over the revenue forecasting sheet that you have updated?
Yeah, so yeah, let me see if I can share some of this on the screen. Hold on one
The
second.
only difficulty that I have, John, just so you know, is I can't print that document. I don't have a printer that can make that.
Yeah, the big one. Right. So hold on one second. Let's see if I can. What am I missing here? So does everybody see this document here? This is the Frank's handout. And down in the bottom here, are people seeing this with my cursor is?
Yes.
Yep.
Down in the bottom here are some adjustments that we made to local receipts. There was discussion up here, the cherry sheet receipts. We dropped down to, was dropped down to 22,700,000, and then we made some adjustments to the local receipts, some more than others, where we basically came up trying to as we get in the actual receipts from this year and we look forward, we fine tune it all. So we made some adjustments on the revenue forecasting there, some down more. And then up at the top right here, you see the ambulance fund now sits at 944,000, and the motor vehicle sits at almost 40,000. So when we take these all in, I'm going to stop sharing this and share my other document.
So while he's pulling up that other document, I just want to use one specific example. So we've spent a couple of days and today jointly with Frank and John on conference call and talked about specifically what effect that the coronavirus is going to have on specific revenue streams. So just to give you a quick snapshot of one of the things that we talked about was the meals tax. So the accountant gave us very specific information of how much was generated out of the meals tax for the last 3 quarters, and then to try and project from March, April, and May of this year how much that's going to be reduced because of the fact that, you know, obviously the meals tax isn't creating the type of revenue that it has been. So for the first quarter that we used for a guide, the meals tax was $50,777. And for the second quarter of September, October, November, it was $46,472. And then the last quarter that we have was from December, January, and February. It was another 42,000. So trying to use those numbers and project what the final meals tax revenue is going to be is an example of the challenge that the creators of these documents have. So with that, I just wanted to use that for an example. And again, thank John for the work that he's been doing on this revenue forecast sheet. Go ahead.
Okay, so up at the top here, hopefully you can all see this. We have, this is the 28,145,000 that we're going to get projected from our real estate tax. Then with the adjustments that we made, this right column here is kind of the adjusted column. You can see we have the lower cherry sheets here, adjusted local receipts. Frank actually asked that I take most of the enterprise money out since it's a wash anyway. And this is 104,000 that's going to come from the enterprise fund to fund a couple. I think there's 2 warrants that are funded by the enterprise fund. Free cash has not changed. And then other available funds. And what this is the ambulance funds that we're getting from last year that as we roll over. And then that also includes Chapter 90, which is like 355,000. But this also includes the indirect $512,000 from the enterprise fund that I think it's Article 5 or Article 7 where we're getting those revenues. So altogether, we have 11,499,000 to go with our 28 million, and that gives us the amount of money that we're going to have down here, projected revenues of 39,645,000. We have to take away some offsets, so we have the cherry sheet offsets and the abatement. This year, normally we have money in here for snow and ice deficit, but this year we actually stayed under the 120,000 that we had in the budget, so there's no there. So altogether, with the offsets, we have 39,260,000. Estimated Article 2 right now sits at 36,201,000, which leaves $3 million available additional for capital. So there's a document here that I didn't send out just because I didn't have it done yet until later this afternoon, and I'll try to share it right here. I did send it to you, Rick. Did you get a chance to look at it?
Which one, John?
Hold on, let me stop sharing here. This one here.
Yeah, Frank gave me a copy of that when I was in the office today. So.
All right, this isn't actually a slightly updated one. And this needs a lot of work. And this is where, I don't know how much we want to go into this tonight, but this is going to show us where our shortfall is in Article 2. And so skipping all down to this bottom part here, let me see if I can enlarge it so you can all see it. I don't know if this will work or not.
John, before you skip down, let's just talk a little bit about, because this is the document that we spent the better part of a couple of days on last week.
Right.
Just
okay.
identifying, and I know this is,
All
a
right.
topic that was discussed at length was the funding sources for the various warrant articles.
All right. Well,
So-
this is my modified version of it. So
Can you send that out to everyone?
yeah, I can email it out.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
I should have.
Okay, so just so you know, there's a specific columns that we have earmarked where the expenditures will come out of, and the the intent is to try to create the levy. We want to make sure we try to spend as close to the levy as possible, right, John? That's one of the goals.
That is correct. And this particular year, we're obliterating the levy, and that's kind of the problem. And a lot of that reason is because now, first of all, let's define what the levy is. You know, you can use levy as a noun and a verb. So basically, when you're levying, you're applying funds from source accounts. So if I just emailed that out, by the way. So if we go real quick down the bottom, let's define what our levy is. If you looked at, and hopefully you can all see this, where it says levy allocation analysis.
Yep.
And we're using the adjusted forecast. So this is the, and again, these are my numbers. Frank's are a little different, but they were pretty close. The available estimated revenue is $39,265,17. So that includes everything. So now if we take away, now we want to start taking away some of the source funds that we know exist, because they're not part of the levy. So if we take away the $104,000 for the enterprise, we take away the $355,000, the Chapter 5. This is the Comcast cable account that the money goes from Comcast to the town now instead of directly to WHCA. But the big numbers here are the ambulance fund and free cash. So when you subtract all of that away, this number right here, $35,743,823, that is what is technically the levy. Okay. So the problem is if you go back up and look at our Article 2, I don't know if I can get it on the same page here. Our Article 2 is $36,201,803. So technically within our levy, we don't even have enough money to fund Article 2. That doesn't mean we can't afford all of this. It just means that we have to start reallocating our resources on how we're going to pay for it all. So theoretically, everything in this column from this 15,000 down to this 875 has to move to a column on the right someplace. And about $450,000 of Article 2 has to get funded from someplace on the right as well.
Well, I think it's important to know that we're not done with Article 2 yet. I mean, we haven't
well,
even
exactly.
really started.
Exactly. All of these are still a draft. So
Right.
if you look at these columns down here in the bottom of kind of started source, well, I don't want to get into that. Why did this happen in Article 2? Why are we over the levy in Article 2? And the reason why is if you look last year down at the bottom right, we had in Article 2 of 33,440,000 or 441, say. This year, our Article 2 is 36,201,803. We've increased it $2.7 million. Now, why did that happen? Well, the big reason why it has happened is we took all of our debt service, and I can get it. I don't know if it'll still show it. Did this change to Article 2? Do you see Article 2 now?
Yep.
Okay. All of this number right here, this $1.3 million, the only thing, and this is the argument that I was having with Frank earlier, all of this number last year was all separate articles outside of Article 2. So that's why Article 2 has jumped so much. And by the way, this is a Madden recommendation that all of this debt service be moved inside of Article 2. The problem is we we've done so much of it that it's really caused an issue with Article 2. So back to the warrant articles. Yeah, and this is all open for discussion, and we'll figure this all out. But we're going to have to move $1.2 million, see this line down here, from this column to the right somewhere. Now, what's going to happen is in this calculation right here, and please ask questions if you have it, this shows us that we do have the money. We have $39,260,000. Total warrant's going to be $39,071,000. So we do have we have enough by $189,000. The question is, do we want to spend all of our free cash to pay for all of these warrants? If we pay for everything now, we'll have about, say, $175,000 worth of free cash left over, and that's probably not the smartest thing to do, at least in my opinion, with the way things are right now. But all that's open for discussion, obviously.
In the and you, Dave, can probably speak to this, but in the capital committee or the facilities committee, the last one, there was an amount, I believe Frank mentioned he wanted to leave. Was it how much was it that he wanted to leave in free cash?
That's a question for Dave.
Yeah, that was in
I
his
don't think
meeting.
he gave an exact amount.
I thought he did.
I
That
thought
was
he said like 300,000.
That was 500,000.
Was it 5?
Yeah, I think he said 3 to 5. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, 3 to 5.
Okay, thank you.
So we do have to remember that we will be getting free cash back from, after June 30th, when we close all the accounts. Specifically, we'll be getting $512,000 from last year's indirect cost from the enterprise fund. But the problem is that we don't get that free cash until it's certified, and that's probably late October.
Mhm.
So, if it was any other year, we could probably say, yeah, we're okay with $200,000 worth of free cash for a couple months, but until the new free cash gets certified. But where this is not a normal year by far, we may want to have some discussions and it's going to be more, this could be something that we need to discuss with the selectmen in 2 weeks on what are we going to do with this. And hopefully we'll have more details on it as well.
Yeah, and I think that we do have the benefit of time too. I know we need to spend some more time on this, but again, at least we've got the ball rolling, identified the shortcomings and the challenges that we face this year are because of the fact that we moved so much into Article 2. We need to make some dramatic changes to the way we budget out of these other accounts. So, I mean, just for information as well, it is an unusual year because we are dissolving 2 revolving accounts, which will, obviously free up an amount of money to use for all capital needs. So again, we really need to identify for the capital committee the dollar amount that we can spend. And we really should recommend that some amount of money be left over in, for instance, the Reserve for Appropriation ambulance account to put into capital stabilization for the next couple of years. We certainly need to retain some reserves for that.
So right now you see in these columns, this free cash column and this ambulance fund column. This number here is what's left in free cash. We've allocated $938,000 in free cash. We still have $985 left. And the same, this is the ambulance fund. We've allocated $577. We still have $405 left. But this $1.2 million, if we're going to do it all, has to come out of those 2 numbers. So I just trying to clarify what this is.
Kathleen, you have a question?
Yeah, it's a very naive question.
No, it isn't.
When these funds were put into Article 2, they must have existed, so they existed outside of Article 2 last year. So
Yeah,
shouldn't we see a decrease someplace else?
It decreased. They were standing warrants like these. So
Yeah.
So basically, if you look at, I'll go back to that. If you look at last year's warrant, we had warrant, who knows what it was, warrant 23 was this debt payment, one of 3 for 2 cruises. The next article, and they were standalone articles, just like, so yes, we have less in, those came out of the outside of Article 2 in the warrant and got moved inside. So yeah, the payment, it's actually probably a little less. And actually, here you see it's 1.349 last year, and it's 1.319 this year because of the interest goes down and all that. So yeah, it is all still within the budget. It's just now it's within Article 2. And next year, since it is within Article 2, we still have to maintain sustainability to be able to afford that without the extra money that we're getting from the ambulance fund, because we have double ambulance fund money this year. We won't have that next year. So we have to, how are we going to sustain having all of that within Article 2 if we're taking funding Article 2 with, say, $450,000 from a one-time money source from the ambulance fund that's going away?
Okay.
Does everybody understand really why Madden recommended that those debt services move into Article 2? It's really about the fact that it's reoccurring debt. Is that not correct, John?
Yes, exactly.
It's not one-time payments that you would create a warrant article, standalone warrant article for. It's reoccurring debt. That's the reason why it's now going to be incorporated into Article 2 going forward.
Right. I mean, and you can see right here for one instance, this Article 14 for the cruiser, a couple versions of this ago, this was 22,000 or 26,000, and it was going to be a debt payment over 3 years. And there was a decision at one point to go ahead, this 63,000, now we're funding it all in one time. Well, maybe we might have now where we're at, maybe we go back to the 22, but being able to do that again is something that, if we can do that, that's best practice. Where we're at right now, maybe we need to go back to, doing it as a 3-year note or something like that, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, but at least payments are what we're trying to get away from. And again, we really have to fall back on Madden's recommendation. And one of them was very specifically, if we can afford it, as John said, we should be purchasing these things outright and saving the amount of money on a lease purchase. So so for the cruiser and for the motorcycle, you'll notice that the amount now is not one of 3 lease purchase payments, but it's a cost to pay outright. So that's more of what we have to discuss. I think you gave a really good summary. I think. Does anybody have any other questions specifically to this particular document and how we've arrived here and how hopefully we can take in the next 4 weeks and get this all balanced out and make recommendations on the.
Hey, Rick, it's Al. How are you?
Good, Al. Go ahead.
Just looking at this, purchase shotguns, $2,900, say $3,000 for shotguns.
Right. So again, this is a standalone warrant article.
Yeah.
It's just not a reoccurring debt.
Right.
So,
as far as now, do we know that those shotguns are actually purchased?
No, they haven't been. So John, can you go back to the screen where I can see everybody so I can find out?
Oh, yeah, hold on.
Right.
Sorry, Al, I couldn't see you, so I didn't know you had a question.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm just talking about the shotguns itself, that's all.
Right.
Especially small items like that,
It really is. So the capital committee is charged with identifying and prioritizing the needs of capital items. So anything less than $10,000 doesn't fall within that category.
Sure.
So, we have to be cognizant of the fact that sometimes warrant articles will be put together that are split apart. When you have an article sitting right next to it that's for tasers, and you could combine the two, and then you would have a capital warrant article. So again, obviously there's a need. Otherwise, the chief wouldn't have recommended it. But it is ultimately up to this committee to decide recommendations and whether or not we support that particular recommendation. That's our charge.
Right.
And our recommendations get before the voters, who ultimately are the ones that decide whether we need those new shotguns.
You have small items like that over times 10 is over $20,000. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
what do we do with that? You know what I mean? That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a good point.
And this is what we could probably ask the chief, is there a reason, or what's the average cost? I mean, I don't know anything about what a shotgun costs. So are there requirements for safety for police officers to have certain types of shotguns? So that's something.
Well, I'm sure there's qualifications that each officer has to fulfill, you know, with accuracy and that type of thing. So, you know, the things get old, they get worn out, and they need to be replaced. So
I know the tasers, but there was something with the tasers where they can't tell how long they're electrocuting someone. Well, that's a liability. They would cost a lot more if we didn't replace them. You
Right.
know?
So we're pretty dependent on the department budget manager to make responsible recommendations for what they need to do their job. So, I mean, the worst thing that could happen is, you know, you got someone lunging at you with a knife and your taser doesn't work, or, you know, you're staring down somebody with a gun and your shotgun.
You better not have a taser in your hand if someone's lunging at you with a
It's
you want a little bit, you got a little bit more firepower.
That's when you want to reach for
shotgun
your
isn't
shotgun.
right either. That's too
I take
far
it
away.
over the taser.
Well, I think one thing we
Don't donate my shotguns, okay?
this goes into why I keep saying we need to really rethink the budget. We're going to be if we're going to look at national averages for domestic violence under this, you know, COVID, we've got a 40% increase in domestics. Not in the town. I don't know what's going on in a town, but you know, you could follow a trend usually locally for increases. Well, you don't want to go in with a shotgun or a gun. You want residents that are in stressful situations to be handled in a way that's not risky to their lives or the officer's life.
So
I
that
mean,
goes back to your point about bringing up on the about the new environment and
the
what we
new
need to
environment.
refocus.
Exactly.
Okay.
I have
you.
a question in
Right,
regards
Dave.
to, not a question, but more of a comment. I think John Galvin's presentation on the revenue is key, and I'd like to have him present that to the Board of Selectmen and maybe even department heads, because what department heads need to understand is how capital warrant articles or warrant articles for that matter, what's the availability for funding for those? So if they're in the sense that we're in a cash overload, you know, we have an influx of cash this year, but we're not going to have that. We're not going to have that influx next year, and that's really going to affect their ability to
Sustain that.
have capital articles. So you know, at the very least, this presentation should be given to the Board of Selectmen, if not department heads.
Sure. No, good
I
suggestion.
agree with that.
Yeah.
That was kind
Right.
of when Rick asked things that wanted to be discussed at our joint meeting, and I went first. That's kind of what I meant, that I think we needed to discuss that. Hopefully during that time we can make some adjustments to the allocations so that, you know, we've got some solutions instead of just throwing out the problem. And I think that should happen over the next couple of weeks, I would think.
I would say, just from experience, that by the time we get to the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, that budget analysis and the revenue forecast are going to balance out a lot better than they do now. So, but you know, it's all good. So, it is a process, and like I said, we're actually lucky we have a little bit more time to get it right and make sure we're making the best recommendations for the town meeting. All right. Any other questions regarding any of the revenue forecasting or the spreadsheet that we, and now everybody has that by email? Did everybody get it? John sent it out. So take a look at that, and if you want to formulate some additional questions, but I would say before we get to our next meeting on the 5th, you're going to have quite a different version of that document. All right, so moving on to our agenda, warrant articles and funding. So we went over that pretty well. Under old business, subcommittee reports. Dave, do you want to start out with the Buildings, Facilities, and Capital Expenditure Committee?
Yeah. So we voted one article. We voted the additional $100,000 for DPW for road repairs and paving. The committee is aware of the issue regarding funding source, meaning that exactly what John had just presented. The numbers were a little different. We had some additional questions on a lot of the warrant articles. With some of the warrant articles, a couple are going to go to the, from Fred Small is going to follow up with the Whitman Hanson Regional School District. And Frank is going to follow up with Tim Greno regarding the fire department warrant article. Frank amended that article to state that it's a reserve account for the ambulance and the 150, and raise and appropriate the remaining for the ladder truck repairs. That article is getting more.
He froze.
Dave, you froze. You might have to go back a little bit.
Yeah, just back up one sentence. You froze a minute, that's all.
Where did I leave off?
Just one sentence ago.
So Frank amended the fire department article to state that it was 150. Get the exact amount. It's 100 money to for a reserve for purchase ambulance account, and raise and appropriate money for the ladder truck repairs. That's more in line with Mr. Madden's recommendations. And as part of that, what our next step, once we get past this budget season, or even before town meeting, our committee is going to be reaching out to the department heads and asking for a list of their capital items and recurring costs, so we can try to start our capital improvement plan matrix and have that into a draft into the Board of Selectmen by October of this year for fiscal year 2021, right? 22, thank you.
It's 2020.
2022.
2022. Yes, that's
Right.
exactly what I have in my notes from your meeting.
Yep. And that's it.
Okay, any questions for Dave regarding that meeting? So again, we look forward to, the fact that we don't have a meeting next week, I think is going to give that committee a little bit more time to finally identify maybe an exact amount that we're going to commit to spending this year on capital articles. So it may change some of the articles that are on the list now. Who knows, it may defer. But I mean, we've been deferring maintenance, especially within the DPW, for quite some time. So if we can't do it this year, we're certainly not going to do it next year. So I think it's important that the deliberations that committee is having are going to have a long-lasting effect on our town's finances. So, thanks, Dave. Anybody else? Anything?
No, Rick, I'll totally agree with you with the regards to the DPW. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a bad situation that we find ourselves in with that.
Yeah.
Deferring maintenance is never good, but even the consultants that we had come in to look at the capital plan said that was one of our major deficiencies, was deferred maintenance to the Department of Public Works. So hopefully that's something we can get a good handle on. All right. Thanks, Al.
The
And
Collins, did you refer to the
Collins.
Collins?
Yeah, the Collins Center, yeah.
The Collins Center.
When they made
report.
recommendations, I think they very specifically picked out the DPW and said that they were, the capital, deferred capital maintenance was in the high 60%.
Yeah, a good percentage of their recommendations was DPW, wasn't it? Most of it.
So I'm glad to see we're finally making progress on that too.
Was there, in the Madden had something to say about DPW too. What was it about the condition of the building for, in terms of being employed there? The building was bad.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I think a couple of years ago, we had OSHA come in and made new recommendations that cover municipal bodies. And now, you know, so some of the situations that they have endured down there are now OSHA, you know, they fall under
Violations.
compliance with OSHA if we don't do something to fix them, you know, so.
Okay.
It's something to certainly keep in mind. All right, anything else on capital? We'll move on to the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee. I've got it down here as RACC, it's RAAC. So some of the developments within that committee, we met for the first time last week. I don't know if anybody had an opportunity to take a look at that meeting, but you know, for me, you know, I tried to be good, but it was difficult. Like I said, I feel like we're being held hostage by the school committee. We're not setting a budget because they're waiting for some final, you know, last hope that we're going to do something to either phase in the method of payment or look to give some type of an abatement or something to the town of Hanson to help lessen their financial impact. So I hope that the meeting last week, you know, I tried to send a clear message, and I think this committee has helped me create that clear message. This committee has voted on several occasions to say that we will not support or recommend to town meeting any assessment that's not calculated using the statutory method. And then further from our last meeting, when this committee said that we will not support anything that includes a phased approach to instituting the statutory method or any other financial consideration that causes us to pay Hanson's bills. So at the end of the day, I think the message was sent loud and clear, but to follow up on our last meeting, the committee failed to have a vote. There was a motion and a second and discussion to find out what kind of support was within the members of the reassembled committee. Well, by the time it got close to the discussion being over, the motion was rescinded. My guess was that they felt that they didn't have enough votes to carry. So the meeting adjourned, and the recommendation was for the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools to be invited to the next meeting, which is tomorrow at 4 o'clock, and that all of the members of the committee were invited to present questions in advance from ours. So again, I'd like to recognize at this time the amount of work that went into preparing. It actually is only one question, but it's a pretty detailed question that was submitted. Between Kathleen and Rosemary and Don Byers put together some extraordinary backup information that was used to put that letter together to get the question to Mars in advance of tomorrow's meeting. So the question is, you know, with all of that information, how could Mars make any other recommendation but for us to move forward with the statutory method and not implement any type of a phased-in approach, but for Hanson to recognize their financial deficiencies and start educating their citizens about what they can do to remedy it without invoking or, like I said, derailing the whole process for the school committee to set a budget. So I'll certainly keep you updated to the next meeting. Like I said, it's tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And if anybody has any input, I certainly appreciate. But again, I've been given an enormous amount of support from 2 members of this committee and 1 member of the school committee in preparing for the questions for Mars tomorrow. So.
I would like to just quickly add that in addition to not paying Hansen's bills, not pulling something that would regularly be seen within a regional agreement out and having us pay it separately. Really looking for a true partnership,
Right.
where we both understand what education costs and we pay for it, instead of how do we get the best deal, because we can't supply a proper education if we aren't paying for it, essentially. I think if everybody got that letter, you saw that the commissioner says that we should be paying 25 to 30% above that foundation. And we've managed. We've done some good financing here, and we should be proud of ourselves. But because we haven't had that good partnership, they're only paying 5%, and that's where we've been seeing that deficit for so long. Part of our money was flowing over to our investment was flowing over to Hansen, and these Chapter 70 tries to help you achieve. It's like steps to help you achieve that 30%, right? When our Chapter 70 is being utilized by another town, it's a handicap for us financially. So any phased-in approach is just a continued handicap for Whitman to meet financial obligations. And this isn't the time to be asking, as we're talking about not we're not recognizing police officers, cost of living raises, to be paying in any way, shape, or form bills that Hansen should be, or reasonable for Hansen to be paying for. It's just you're tone deaf if you think that, that's
All right. Thank you, Rosemary. Kathleen, you had something
Thanks.
as well?
My question is, you asked Jeff Simonek if you could get copies of the questions that other members of the RAC submitted. Did that happen?
That has yet to happen. No, I also sent an email to ask why there wasn't a member of the Hansen Finance Committee on the board as it was made up last week. And as a result, now there is going to be a reformation of the committee at the outset of tomorrow's meeting. So I will, if I do get the copies of the questions in advance, I certainly will make them available. So right now, there has been no communication, and I haven't seen the question that I posed come back to the full committee yet either. So,
Okay.
So
Hey,
I'll definitely.
Rosemary, great point.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thanks, Rosemary. Thanks, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
Anybody else want to add anything to that? Okay, welcome Randy and Justin. Is there anything you would like to bring out of the Selectmen's meeting tonight to the committee? We're just about done with our agenda, so not to put you on the spot. If there's nothing, there's nothing.
Dates, election date, looking like June 27th. Town meeting date still up in the air. Really nothing tremendously imperative for this committee
Okay.
right now. There was some budget discussion, but that was held off until our joint meeting will take place.
Okay, great. Yeah, we were talking at length about the budget today. We still have a pretty good amount of work to do to get it to balance out for our meeting. Justin, anything from you?
No, that was about it.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Does anybody else have anything under new business? We have no communications. So if you want to take a look at our upcoming meeting schedule, we are, just to remind you, we're not meeting next week. And then our next posted meeting has been set for May 5th with the Board of Selectmen. Then we have, well, now we're going to have quite a few more meetings if the annual town meeting has now been scheduled for June 27th. So right now on our schedule, we have May 12th, May 19th, and May 26th. We'll be adding June dates to that, I would imagine, after we meet with Board of Selectmen. Anybody else, anything that they want to bring up?
Sorry, Rick, if I can just jump in there.
Go ahead,
The
Justin.
town election's been set for the 27th. The town meeting has not been set, but we're considering June 15th and June 22nd.
Oh, the election is set for the 20th. Okay, sorry. And then there's no set date for the annual town meeting, sometime in June.
Correct, but yeah, mid to late June.
Very good. All right, thank you. All right, so if there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the
Second.
motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call.
Second,
Okay, John,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Rosemary,
yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Al,
Yes, sir.
Chuck,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
and I vote yes. This meeting is adjourned. Again, thank you, John, for hosting again on
Thanks,
the
John, for all your